Greetings, salutations, happy Wednesday, August the 12th, 2026. Welcome to Backstage, the daily show for entrepreneurs, founders, visionaries, and builders ready to stop waiting in the wings and let their stories power their growth. Yes, it's Wednesday, it's summer, and I'm pretty exhausted. I don't know about you, but not in a bad way. Just a lot to process mentally, a lot going on. And I know I'm not the only one. So there it is. But what's on my mind today? Well, I saw somebody post about this topic of, growth for growth's sake isn't the point anymore. It's got to be growth for, some other reason. And more controlled growth. In other words, bigger isn't always better. So having 100 people who follow you, who are in your community, who support you, who value what you offer, and if all 100 of your followers are all in on you, that would be better than having 10,000 who don't care. They just clicked on subscribe because whatever, and they don't really pay any attention. If you've ever been on TikTok, and I was on it for a nanosecond, that's kind of how that is. It gives you broad exposure, but it's fleeting, shall we say. It's fleeting. You get the sugar high, but maybe not the long-term satiation that you really need. So it really is like a bad diet. But here's what's on my mind. This is something I've learned, and today I'm not going to cite any articles or whatever. I just want to talk for a few minutes about my own experience with media and the sandbox of media. When I was a kid, I used to make, well, first of all, I used to pretend to be a talk show host. So what does that tell you? Turned everything into a microphone. When I was in junior high, I used to make fake radio shows on a little tape recorder with my friend David. And we'd, made up commercial breaks, and we had content, and it was the two of us on there, and we'd, hit those two keys on the tape recorder, the top loading, the top loading tape recorder, like old classic. It was like a brick, basically. And you'd press the two buttons and you'd record to this little plug-in microphone. The quality wasn't that great, but I loved the idea of making those tapes. When I was really little, I ran a hose between my room and my sister's room, because I thought it was so cool, the idea of being able to talk to her through the hose. When I was the idea of being able to communicate with someone who was far away, right, relatively, and still be able to talk to them live was such a cool thing. So that progressed into years ago living in Japan, and I started my first podcast, and it was called Connections That Matter, and kind of a vanilla name in the sense that it didn't really tell you what it's about, but it really was about making connections that matter and seeing the different ways of connecting with people. And so I brought on these guests, and I've talked about this before. Everybody I brought on would say something to the effect of, wow, I learned so much about myself through the process. And so that was revelatory to me. There was the equipment. There was the format of it. Did I enjoy it? I did enjoy it. What about the whole process of the invitation? What about the process of the editing and the posting? And I got to kind of start seeing, this wasn't the tape recorder with the microphone anymore. This was, it was a microphone and a recorder, just far more advanced equipment than what I was using when I was, 12. But I was getting to know the medium and what I could do in that environment. So I've done the interview shows. And then at some point I tried just me talking into a mic like I'm doing now. Different energy, different style. Here's my point for you. I really like podcasting. I like cameras. I like microphones. I like stages. I like all of that, which is fine. But there are so many different styles of stages. And, my friend Shannon runs all kinds of different things. She has in-person events she does. She does online events, all different types. She's constantly innovating and trying new things. It's her jam. She's really good at it. And she's done it consistently and built a community around that. So when she puts out an offer, she gets people who respond to those offers. And there are many, many other ways. There are people who do outdoor adventures as their stage. But I want to come back to what I started off talking about in the very beginning 5 minutes ago, which was talking about that growth for growth's sake isn't the point. Having more followers isn't the point. Having meaningful connections is the point. That's the better metric. And I tend to agree with that. I tend to mostly 99% agree with that. So I guess the calling that I'm seeing for my own clients now is not prescribing what that stage looks like for them. And what I've started to do now with clients is the first 3 months of our engagement are figuring out two things primarily. Well, three things. What are your primary objectives? Because that's always important. Where do you want to end up? To the extent that you can articulate it. Sometimes it's not as clear. Two, what is your core story? What are the stories that are powering you? Your backstory, your origin story, the story now. How do you personalize and humanize whatever you're doing? Because that's always going to be relevant. And then three is, what do the stages look like that make you happy? Is it a room with 12 people sitting in a circle and you're doing some kind of activity? My friend Meredith did a play date in Manhattan at a studio recently, and we did these improv things, and we went outside to Central Park, and we did a bunch of. It was fantastic. It was a form of a stage, right? But it was in a studio with mirrored walls for the they do a lot of dancing in these studios and stuff. But we were doing other things, so there are just so many stages to build, and I think if you're stuck on an idea of the stage has to be, now I'm going to be a little over dramatic here. The stage has to be a stadium full of people. I want to, Tony Robbins style, 1990s, 20,000 people dancing and walking on fire and all celebrating what I've got to say. That is a very tiny percentage of the stages that are out there. And certainly there are some people who can aspire to that, should aspire to that. That's their stage. If that's not you, though, there is a process of figuring out what your stage is and then going about building it. It may not exist. Maybe it exists, but not where you are. So you have an opportunity. So then your priorities become building a stage in your local town, building a community center, building a meeting center, but doing it in your own way and curating that and creating a space for experiences and connection and relationship building, because that's what it all comes down to. That is an expression of who you really are and the value that you bring. So I would just encourage you, if you're feeling stuck, often I've found for myself, if I'm feeling stuck, I've put my mind on an object that is someone else's making, and I'm judging myself by their standard of success or their standard of what a stage looks like or a community. And it's okay. We look around, we window shop. Well, what are they doing? What are you doing? What's working? There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm just encouraging you to allow yourself the time to explore with wonder, what if you didn't have rules, what would your stage look like? What would it be? What experience would you curate? And if that takes you off social media, if it takes you into the forest, on a mountain, on a lake, if it takes you into a room somewhere nearby, at a ballroom nearby, if it takes you to a special curated online space, great. But you get to craft that. And that is a huge part of the experience of coming together and sharing whatever brilliance, whatever teachings you have, whatever you facilitate, whatever transformation you make. And I would say this is true for, founders and CEOs of product companies, tech companies as well. When you think about your employees and your stakeholders and your clients, you can start opening up and thinking about different stages to present on and to bring them on that stage. What does that stage look like? People want engagement. They want to feel. This is why the creator economy and influencers have gotten big, because in a low trust situation, it's like, I want to follow someone, and people want access to the people they follow. They want to be able to message them. Well, how can you curate that for your clients to grow your company and build an ecosystem of attraction and value and where your customers, clients, and stakeholders feel seen and valued? Imagine that. So I'm just going to leave you with that. What does a stage with no rules, your own stage, your unique stage, what could that look like? I'd love to hear from you. Drop a note on Substack. As always, thank you so much for listening. I hope this helps you. Please invite a friend who's a visionary, a builder, an entrepreneur, someone building something, leading something, and they want a little space to dream. And as always, try to be good to yourself and good to others, and we will check back again with you tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.